It happened without warning. One moment, Earth was alive with voices, traffic, and laughter. Then silence. A global hush fell like a guillotine. Systems went dark. Satellites blinked out. Communications fractured. Every screen across the planet flashed the same unknown symbol, then nothing. At first, people thought it was a glitch. A solar flare, maybe. Within 7 minutes, orbital strikes began. Not bombs, precision disintegration beams. Entire cities vanished without sound. No explosion. Just a wave of white, and then, ash. Governments tried to respond. Military channels scrambled. Fighter jets launched, but never made it beyond cloud cover. They were erased mid-air. Over 30% of the global population died in the first hour. The rest scattered. Screaming into subways, deserts, mountains. It didn't matter. The death wasn't random. It was calculated, surgical. They targeted water sources, food storage, and power grids. Within a day, civilization collapsed into chaos. Within 3, there was no civilization left. What they didn't destroy, they sterilized. Fields poisoned. Oceans flash-boiled. Skies turned copper-gray. When they spoke, it wasn't to communicate. It was to declare. A broadcast, intercepted and replayed from wreckage, translated crudely. Species 1138, deemed biologically unstable. Unauthorized spread risk. Immediate sterilization enacted. Status complete. Sterilization. That's what they called it. Not genocide. Not war. Just cleanup. Like humans were a mold growing too close to their pristine galactic architecture. Across the solar system, satellites recorded the invasion. Then they were severed one by one. Mars colonies were silenced. Lunar bases fell next. Earth became isolated, alone in the dark, under the watch of silent orbiters that never left their station. Machines hovered across continents, scanning for movement. Those who survived learned not to light fires. Not to speak. Not to breathe too loud. There was no resistance. Nothing left to resist with. Nukes never launched. Drones never lifted. Human ingenuity, so proud and vicious in the past, now buried under rubble and wet ash. 7 billion gone. Not over months. Days. In the ruins of Tokyo, a child wandered alone through melting steel. In what was once Johannesburg, a group of survivors was flash-burned while huddled in a sewer. In New York, the Statue of Liberty cracked at the knees and sank into the Hudson, unmourned. And then, nothing. The attackers didn't claim the land. Didn't build over it. They just left machines to monitor it. Earth became a caged graveyard. A message to the stars. But not everything was dead. There was a signal. A weak transmission pushed through the static, deep in the Amazon basin, far from satellites, far from machines. It was encrypted, military-grade, ancient by modern standards. A holdover from a time when nations still competed for dominance. The message was just one line, in a dead protocol, bouncing off dead satellites. Asset awake. Status standing by. No one heard it. Not the galactic overseers. Not any of the surviving fragments of humanity. But it was sent. And the jungle rustled in response. Because somewhere deep in the green, beyond the reach of drones and scans and artificial eyes, something human still moved. Not a refugee. Not a survivor. A different category altogether. One life. Missed. Not by accident, but by design. And in the silence that followed Earth's fall, while the machines kept scanning for heat signatures and movement, they missed one heartbeat. Just one. And that was the mistake. They weren't conquerors. They didn't want territory, resources, or slaves. They were exterminators. The galactic soldiers had no name for themselves, only designations. They didn't speak to humans, didn't negotiate. They followed protocol. Protocol C3.1, preemptive sterilization of emerging hostile species. Humanity had reached the threshold: interplanetary travel, autonomous weapons, artificial general intelligence, and nuclear saturation. That was enough. The decision wasn't made by a council. It was an algorithm. Cold, impartial. Earth was marked as a Category Red threat. Execution was automated. The fleet dispatched from a border sector garrison. No ceremony. No announcement. The soldiers were synthetic organic hybrids. 10 feet tall, encased in reactive armor that adapted mid-combat. Their muscles weren't grown, they were printed. Their thoughts weren't individual, they operated on synchronized combat networks. Each one was a moving war factory, equipped with matter fusion blades, terrain-reactive propulsion, and self-healing limbs. They didn't breathe. They didn't sleep. And they didn't stop. To them, Earth wasn't a planet, it was a scenario. A test run. The extermination proceeded on script. Standard orbital bombardment, followed by atmospheric deployment. The species' defenses, primitive, carbon-based, and electromagnetic, were irrelevant. No losses were recorded on their side. Not one. The soldiers moved with mathematical efficiency. Each death was logged. Each city flagged as sterilized. Their drones spread across continents, scanning for survivors, routing stragglers. Resistance was brief and insignificant. Human weapons couldn't penetrate their exoshells. Projectiles deflected. Lasers absorbed. Fire suffocated in their wake. They did not fear. They did not hesitate. They executed. From orbit, supervisors recorded planetary degradation. A successful operation. Earth's biomass reduced by 92%. The remaining 8% was deemed non-viable. Reports indicated brief anomalies, drones disabled in rainforests, static and audio channels, an energy spike in South America. Each flagged, noted, dismissed. Statistical noise. Post-cleanup units were not recalled. The hegemony didn't see themselves as villains. To them, Earth was a sickness. A cancer cell growing too fast. In the last 80 years, human expansion had increased threefold. Satellites launched weekly. Terraforming concepts had entered prototype stage. Weaponized AI had evolved past intended constraints. Surveillance logs showed species-wide competition, violence, and ideological fragmentation. The conclusion was algorithmic. Humans were unstable. Hegemony doctrine demanded preemptive action. Thousands of civilizations had been integrated through peaceful uplift. But Earth, by its nature, resisted control. Not yet spacefaring, but violent enough to destabilize nearby systems within a century. The decision wasn't personal. Just necessary. They didn't occupy Earth. That wasn't the mission. After sterilization, the soldiers entered hibernation mode. Their task complete, they waited underground in cryovaults, dormant but ready to reactivate should any anomaly occur. In orbit, 2 sentry stations remained, monitoring atmospheric data, seeding the planet with cleansing spores to neutralize any remaining biological threats. Nothing showed up. No movement. No sound. The data feeds were clean. One of the supervisors noted something odd in a final post-action report. The last scan from the Amazon registered a thermal irregularity, a spike in temperature inconsistent with jungle decay. The anomaly lasted for 8 seconds, then vanished. Resolution was poor. Terrain interference. No follow-up dispatched. It was signed off as sensor drift. Another report showed intermittent corruption in shortwave radio signals, low frequency, tight band, old encryption. Not enough to classify as comms traffic. More like ghost code, residual transmissions bouncing between atmosphere layers. Untraceable. Unimportant. So they moved on. The hegemony did not celebrate victories. It processed them. Earth was logged. Catalogued. Labeled as resolved threat. Its coordinates buried beneath thousands of others. A dead world with a red mark beside its name. No memory. No regret. One protocol failed. A single rule, buried deep in the logic, confirmed total species extinction. But the soldiers didn't confirm. They assumed. Because no species had ever survived. Until now. Before the fall, he didn't exist. No records. No digital footprint. No birth certificate, no known alias. His name was stripped the day he entered the program. Not for secrecy, because names implied identity. What they created wasn't a man. It was a weapon. The project was never meant for public eyes. Funded off book, buried under layers of decoy initiatives, it operated in a black site compound deep within the Amazon basin. A place unmarked on satellite maps, hidden beneath decades of misdirection. The asset inside was part of a classified human enhancement program, one that focused not on strength alone, but on survivability, adaptability, and autonomy in high lethality environments. The directive was simple: build the last man standing. He was selected young, recruited from the Naval Special Warfare Pipeline after completing operations no one admitted happened. Recruited not for muscle, but for mindset. Not just a killer, but one who didn't flinch when abandoned. Who saw silence not as isolation, but freedom. What followed was erasure. Physical reconstruction at the genetic level. Musculoskeletal reinforcement. Neural optimization through synthetic dendrite grafts. Memory augmentation. Autonomous healing response. Toxin resistance. Sleep cycle compression. Vision enhancement across 5 spectrums. Pain threshold removed entirely. Over 5 years, he was broken, rebuilt, and refined. The jungle became his proving ground. For months at a time, he operated without contact. Tested against artificial predators, environmental hazards, simulated ambushes. Zero support. Zero oversight. His success rate, 100%. The program dubbed him Asset Theta Black. Internally, they called him something else, the monster in the green. He was never decommissioned. When Earth fell, the black site was mid-cycle. Staff gone. Systems silent. He remained. Not in cryo, not in stasis, but alive. Active. Waiting. No new orders. Just one standing directive etched into him at the neural level. Sustain mission. Adapt to threat. Neutralize. He watched the sky burn from beneath a canopy of silence. Felt the distant shockwaves ripple through the soil. He understood the event with no need for context. Global termination. Planetary kill sweep. Mission breach. He didn't panic. He adjusted. Over the next weeks, the jungle grew quieter. Predator species vanished. Insects stopped buzzing. Machines replaced them, drones, scouts, silent aerial sentries sweeping for heat and movement. He cataloged their behavior, patrol schedules, sensor sweeps. Patterns emerged. Weaknesses. Blind spots. He hunted in silence. The first drone never saw him. He took it apart in the trees, used its components to spoof other patrols. Not a single trace was left. When ground troops arrived to investigate, they didn't report back. One was crushed by a falling tree rigged with an improvised counterweight. Another walked into a spike net hidden in vines. The third vanished entirely. He observed their reactions. Cold, delayed. They didn't suspect sentient resistance, just environmental hazards. He used that assumption. Escalated the kills. Pushed further. Every part of his body was calibrated for this. Not just to survive, but to exploit. While the soldiers moved in formation, he moved like vapor. While they scanned the environment, he became part of it. While they relied on precision, he applied unpredictability. He knew they didn't understand chaos. So he gave them nothing else. He modified a stolen alien sensor, turned it into a motion trip rig. Lured an entire squad into a mudslide that swallowed them whole. Another group was gassed using toxins extracted from native plants, processed through his internal filtration system, then released in a sealed tunnel network. Each engagement took less than 3 minutes. No comms. No traces. No pattern. The machine started marking the region as unstable. Navigation systems flagged the zone for non-entry. But he didn't stay within lines. He expanded. Small movements. Tactical spread. Controlled escalation. He wasn't hiding. He was preparing. He didn't need an army. He was the consequence. The kills stopped being silent. What began as surgical elimination turned into psychological warfare. The soldiers found their own patrols strung up in trees, skinned, dissected, with internal tech removed and repurposed. Aerial drones sent to investigate were rerouted mid-flight, colliding into each other with corrupted navigation. Internal logs showed overwritten directives, source unknown. Then the broadcast started. At first, static bursts, erratic pulses and dead frequencies. Then screams. Human screams. Real, recorded, distorted. Played back in loops over their own encrypted channels. Panic spread through lower-tier units. Behavioral sync faltered. Coordination dropped. The monster had studied them long enough to understand their limits. He began attacking supply convoys. Not for necessity, he didn't need their tech to survive, but to send a message. Heat-resistant alloy plating was melted and reshaped into crude warning markers. Limbs arranged in symbols. Alien glyphs carved into stone, rewritten with human spite. They'd sterilized Earth thinking it was a closed file. He reopened it with blood. He intercepted movement data from one of their relay towers and rerouted a strike team into a flooded ravine. 32 seconds after deployment, only 4 signals remained. 3 were limping. 1 was crawling. None made it out. In response, they deployed their Apex operatives, specialist hunters grown in zero-gravity combat labs. Fully autonomous, designed for unpredictable environments, immune to organic stressors. 7 units entered the jungle. None transmitted after Hour 4. Their last known footage was reviewed by a command node in orbit. It showed thermal signatures vanishing mid-frame, bodies flickering in and out of sensor lock, then nothing but a human voice whispering one phrase. One by one. The orbital monitors initiated atmospheric purging. Napalm-grade compound was dropped across 10 square kilometers. Fire blanketed the canopy. Wildlife incinerated. Silence returned. For 5 days, there was no movement. No interference. The machines recalibrated. Declared the region cleared. On day 6, a monitoring beacon embedded in the ash pinged an anomaly. A heat signature, human-sized, moving toward a decommissioned outpost. It passed through 20 surveillance nets undetected. Left no footprints. Triggered no alarms. But it arrived. The outpost detonated 7 minutes later. All black box data was wiped. No trace left except a single burst transmission captured midair by a passing recon drone. 4 words. Your war just started. They responded by escalating to orbital-level asset denial. High-altitude platforms deployed seismic disruptors, triggering controlled quakes across suspected zones. Infrastructure buried beneath centuries of rock cracked open and fell. The jungle was broken. It didn't matter. He had already moved. By now, he wasn't just surviving. He was dictating tempo. Choosing targets. Manipulating their hierarchy. Soldiers began to malfunction in presence of his kill zones. Some ceased combat functions entirely. Others entered failsafes, initiating self-termination protocols before contact. He didn't just destroy units. He contaminated networks. The invaders began quarantining regions. Redacting maps. Warning their own to avoid. Sector Echo. They stopped calling it Earth. Started calling it what he made it, the Black Zone. Reinforcements were denied. Command concluded resource expenditure had exceeded mission value. The threat was contained. No further action required. But they were wrong. He wasn't contained. He was ascending. On the edge of a fractured uplink relay, he accessed their language banks. Studied their architecture. Learned the command lattice. He began transmitting disinformation across nearby units, mimicking command tones, redirecting patrols, issuing false recalls. He rewrote their trust. The final message received by a departing dropship was a human voice in perfect alien cadence, laced with distortion and venom. Run! No one spoke after that. No more patrols sent. No more recovery missions attempted. He hadn't just fought back. He'd made Earth uninhabitable for them. Not through force, but through terror. The Galactic hegemony didn't issue press releases. It issued classifications. Earth, once labeled a red-level threat zone, was quietly updated in the central database. The new designation carried no public explanation. Only 4 words. Planet quarantined. Do not engage. No further questions were asked. None needed to be. The sterilization fleet never returned. Surveillance units in orbit began shutting down one by one. Not because they were ordered to, because they were compromised. Their data corrupted, command access spoofed, black boxes empty. Their AI cores fried themselves in silent panic. No alarms. No escape logs. Only fragmented phrases in their error logs. Contact detected. Unknown form. Non-compliant. Impossible. The last signal captured by a long-range comm buoy wasn't machine-coded. It was a human voice. Whispered. Calm. Perfectly enunciated in the hegemony's diplomatic tongue. You found us once. Don't come back. The message repeated 5 times. Then silence. Across sectors, command units were debriefed in secure nodes. Patterns were analyzed. No rational conclusions satisfied the equation. No species in recorded history had survived a Class C 3.1 sterilization. None had reprogrammed fleet-level hardware without direct access. None had embedded psychological contamination into machine code. Until Earth. Until him. He had no name in their language, so they invented one. Translated loosely as the Singular Retaliation. A title spoken in private between high-ranking strategists. Never documented. It became a warning, shared only during new threat assessments. They began using Earth as a training case. Not for tactical review, but to teach fear. Cadets were shown the before and after scans. The efficiency of the sterilization, and then, the inexplicable failures. Drones vanishing. Troop clusters lost. Code breakdowns. Silence. The cadets were asked one question. What did we miss? None answered correctly. Because what they missed wasn't military. It wasn't strategy. It was a single outlier. A human not constrained by logic, protocol, or predictability. A being that adapted beyond their models, survived without a chain of command, and struck without hesitation. They called him a myth. But the files remained classified. One forward base near the Solar Expanse received a signal weeks after Earth's blackout. An encrypted package with no known source. When decrypted, it contained images, low-resolution thermal captures of alien soldiers being watched from trees, their shapes outlined in infrared. Frame by frame, the images got closer. The last one was a human silhouette standing in flames. No transmission followed. Some theorized he had perished in the firebombing. Others believed he had moved underground, creating a network of hidden systems powered by alien tech. One rumor suggested he had left Earth entirely, hijacked a deep space vessel, and disappeared into unmonitored space. No confirmation ever arrived. But exploration near Earth ceased. Probes sent close were lost. Crews refused to disembark. No official ban was declared, but none dared approach. Merchant lanes were rerouted. Navigation charts adjusted. Earth became a blank zone, technically existent, tactically ignored. And within the hegemony, something changed. They had once viewed humanity as a disease, chaotic, unstable, dangerous. Now they saw something worse. A species capable of birthing monsters in silence. Of producing vengeance with no army, no backup, no hope, only will. Whispers spread among fringe species, those not fully aligned with the core. Stories of Earth's fall were reshaped. Not as a defeat, but as a lesson. That not all threats come in fleets. That sometimes, the dead leave something behind. Not a survivor. An answer. And in that quiet corner of the galaxy, unvisited, unspoken, the last message left by the monster remained buried in old comm logs. Not in rage, but in calm certainty. I'm still here. They never checked.